here we are with a
Yeah, yo,
post-trade.
just turn it up. Don't even talk softly. Listen, you know why we're here. We're not here to talk about a post-trade deadline here. You got to give the people what they want. We're coming in hot. James Harden is a Sixer. That's all that matters. Are you serious? Did you think we were going to start the podcast any other way? You think we got warm-up jumpers? Just I have been stretching all morning. We are here. This is the Driving Dish NBA podcast. We are going to talk all these trades. But a big one happened. And what was that, Justin?
James Harden is officially a 76er. Ben Simmons is now a Brooklyn Net. So is Seth Curry and Andre Drummond, though we should say that. We also got Paul Millsap, which I've noticed everybody just leave off the talk. It's like nobody's mentioning poor Paul Millsap. Like
it was his birthday yesterday, too. That was crazy. He got traded on his birthday, which, I mean, again, it's a good situation. And I just needed to get all that out of my system. I promise we're going to be more rational about this and not be complete homers the whole podcast, but we are going to have fun with this. I genuinely, because we're going to talk about both sides, I truly believe this is a good trade for both the Sixers and the Nets, and I think they both have a chance of winning the title this year.
So like, not being biased at all, if I were to give a grade, obviously the 76ers would get an A+ and the Nets get a D-. So no, it was funny though. I was laughing. Like my buddies and I were talking about it, and I think Woj tweeted out the starting lineups for both teams now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at the Nets and I'm like, dude, two of your guys have asterisks right now. One, we don't know how he's going to do. He wasn't able to handle Philly. You think he's going to be able to handle a New York-esque media? I don't know. There's a lot of expectation there. And then your other point guard is only able to play half the games when the city he's traveling to or playing in allows it,
I appreciate you getting the smack talk out, because that's the thing, is this is a division rival trade. Like, this is a situation where like everybody's got March 10th circled on the calendar already. That's when Brooklyn is coming to Philly. And there's already been a little bit
you get 1 month to figure out the team chemistry, and then we dive right in.
And it's hilarious because KD took Embiid first in the All-Star draft yesterday, but it's kind of funny because like Brooklyn and Philly, who traditionally I have never really considered the Nets our main rival. Like for me personally, as a Sixers fan with the hat on, the Celtics will always be our main rival.
Honestly, I feel like the Hawks are there a bit sometimes too.
Oh, I think the Hawks were there last year, but I don't think there's the traditional.
No, but you don't remember. Maybe it's just from like before we started doing the process, but I always felt like the Hawks would like beat us right at the end of the season when we were close to making that 8th seed, or were the 8th seed, and then we were the first one bounced out.
Oh, I hated those times.
But it was always the damn Hawks. It felt like I could be wrong on that, and maybe I am.
Well, the Hawks had those runs with Joe Johnson where they were like Joe Johnson and Josh Smith, and like where they were always the kind of like
Millsap,
the
right?
5. Well, no, that was the year they were the 1 seed was the year where they was the Paul Millsap, Al Horford, Kyle Korver, Damari Carroll, and Jeff Teague year. Like that was that's the year when they all won Player of the Month consecutively, where they had the big win streak. And so that particular Hawks team is a little bit better than some of the Joe Johnson years. I mean, the Joe Johnson years, I think the furthest they ever got was the second round, where actually they may have got bounced in the second round too. That Korver and Millsap and Horford team, but like they won a lot of games. Like they won a lot more games than the Joe Johnson teams did.
Well, and maybe it's not them beating the Sixers, but I just remember them being good, and I think I was focused on it because I really liked Kyle Korver, and so maybe I was just focused in on the wins. But I always felt like I kind of had a hatred towards the Hawks.
Oh, that's interesting because I mean I haven't really felt that at all. I think maybe a little bit after last year, but no, I don't think I could have less of an issue with the Hawks with the hat on. No, I really think this is an objectively good trade. I'll go to, because we'll fan out about Philly here in a second. But for Brooklyn, I mean, this is a kind of a home run. Like, I honestly think this is a safer trade for Brooklyn, as crazy as that sounds, than it is for the Sixers. Even with the Sixers getting Harden back, like you add to me, the depth is good. You got 2 first-round picks out of it. I know the one is 2027, but the protections on it are light. It's 1 through 8 protected. So there's a very good chance that conveys. Their 2022 pick next year has optionality. So if the Sixers go far, they could kick the can down the road to 23 potentially and not even have it be a super late first rounder this year. You get Seth Curry, who comes in and plays the Joe Harris role immediately. I mean, if nothing else, it just adds more shooting to that roster. Andre Drummond, look, I got to be honest, like, I never thought I would be as disappointed to let Andre Drummond go as I was. Like Andre Drummond played really well for the Sixers this year.
Yeah.
Like I'm talking, we're getting 12-minute stints. I'm not suggesting though. Even when he started against the Grizzlies in that big win for the Sixers without Embiid, like he was phenomenal. He obviously is going to rebound the ball extremely well. More importantly, if he's coming off the bench with Blake Griffin, they have some chemistry there. They played together in Detroit, so I think again he can rim run, he can catch lobs. Like I think Andre Drummond, they don't need much out of him. Like he's a good
Yes.
complementary backup to LaMarcus Aldridge and Ben Simmons. See, I don't worry about the pressure with Ben Simmons as much in Brooklyn because he has Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. Like, are there days where he's going to be the number two because Kyrie is out because he won't get vaccinated and can't play in Brooklyn? Like, yeah, but he also can play point guard then, which I think will help a little bit as well.
Well,
He's not going to be needed to play as much in the offense. Like, I think if Ben Simmons plays the Draymond Green role, which is probably what his max ceiling is at this point, and just does what he does well, excellent passer, plays elite, if not the best in the NBA perimeter defense. Like he doesn't need to be that offensive creator and take that big share of the load the way he had to in Philly because he has Kevin Durant on his basketball team. Like I think the stress is won't be there. I think he and Patty Mills have a lot of familiarity, both being from Australia. Patty Mills was talking about that a little bit last night after their game. Like, and on top of it, if James Harden really wanted out, yeah, that does fix their chemistry a little bit. Like their chemistry matters too. If Harden didn't want to be in Brooklyn, you could say, oh, well, Ben Simmons didn't want to be in Philly, but you're swapping malcontents, if you will. Now, is the pressure on Ben Simmons to perform because he sat out the whole year? 100%. Like, there's no excuses now. Like, there's no mental health now. Like, you got to get out and you got to play basketball because there are expectations. Like, Brooklyn is trying to win the NBA title this year. They had that expectation going into the season. I think they still have it now. I don't see why this changes with the trade, but I think in terms of future flexibility, it's huge. And I think Ben is really like, do I think it's an entire offense built around Ben, maybe the way he wanted necessarily? No, but you're playing with Kevin Durant. Like, are you kidding me? He's the best player in the world right now. Like, and you have Kyrie Irving. Oh, by the way, with their chemistry bought in, if they're all playing together, like they're going to be a force. Like Brooklyn is not just going to fall off the map here. This is a great trade for the Nets.
yeah, I do wonder because of there were some questions as to what Ben Simmons will do depending on how they'll run out a lineup when Irving is obviously handling the ball the
Mm-hmm.
most. Because from the offensive side of things, Ben Simmons not having the ball in his hands, that creates a situation. Um, but again, like my worry with that is, well, you're only going to get to practice that or see those lineups half of the time. So it's going to be a very confusing thing. And I do wonder if the Kyrie situation where he's not able to play the games, not getting I don't want to say special treatment, not getting special treatment, but I wonder if that rubbed Harden the wrong way and was part of the frustration that led to him potentially wanting out.
I think
I
it
don't know if
definitely was. I think
I
that's what all the reports indicate.
yeah, and it makes sense. I think if you go back to us talking about it, I think that was one of my concerns is, maybe this team is close, but you start giving one player a lenient move here or there and letting them do things that starts to affect the locker room. And so that's what I was wondering was going on there. Now, like you said with Seth Curry, I think that's a good move because with Harris, I saw that they were saying, I think his who was it? Someone was saying that he might need knee surgery again. So if that's the case, obviously it's a great move
Yeah,
to pick up
there's
Seth
a
to
high
fit right
chance
in.
he doesn't play the rest of the year. Like he could, but it's far from a guarantee that Joe Harris plays this year.
Right. So that was that's a preliminary move there. And I think, like you were saying, grabbing the picks, it's a win, it's not a win now move, but it's a get better now move for the Nets. I know that sounds weird saying James Harden is gone, but you add these players in. And also, like you said, I mean the first round protected or the two picks, that also is a down the line move, which I also think is underrated right now because we obviously won't know what that will amount to or where it'll end up. But that could be huge down the line for the Nets
That's
as
'cause
well as things change up.
and it gives them flexibility now. That's the thing is like
Yes.
you have two extra
Well, and
first rounders on hand if you need to trade for a good
yes,
bench player, a good
and
rotation player. Like
I think posted about it. Says this was before the trade deadline ended. Nets are still exploring options with their two first round picks they now have. If they can land somebody else or do something now. From the 76ers side, the like you were saying, you were sad to see Drummond go, but I also think there's an argument to be made that it's sad to see Seth Curry go, possibly
I'm super
the
sad to
best
see Seth Curry go, 100%.
that one of the best shooters on the teams. And I get it. You're replacing him essentially with Harden, who is probably going to be the best shooter on the team, or the him and Embiid are going to be the main scorers, and we'll see how those offensive mentalities mesh together between Embiid and Harden. If nothing else, they can at least get out of each other's way and space the floor to help each other a little, which I like. Um, but the fact that other players on the Sixers that were rumored to be in the trades, like Maxey and Thibault, like those guys not going was huge.
Yeah, it's a coup. Keeping them is absolutely now. Like again, let me be very clear. I am very sad from a Sixers perspective to see both Curry and Drummond go. They were
Yeah.
key parts of the team this year. Part of the Sixers that's been fun is just the chemistry is so much better this year. And I think this trade is so similar in a way that again, it's a rare situation where division rivals will trade to fix each other's chemistry in a way. Like for the Nets, I think they knew that James Harden was leaving after this year, and I think there were two schools of thought: do you keep James Harden and try to win
Hmm.
a title this year because to me, you still are the favorites if you get all three of them on the court together, no matter what. I still think they would have been the team to beat. But if he's walking for free, that's a
Get something.
heavy get something. They gave up a lot for him. Like you gave up Jared Allen, you gave up Karis LeVert, like a ton of picks. Like they went all in to get James Harden, which is obviously a great move. Like I still would defend that move for the Nets all the time.
You have
But
to do it. It's the same with the Sixers.
and
If you have the chance to get James Harden, you have to do it. I mean, to what you were saying with the Nets, I mean, you look down the line, things could get ugly for the 76ers in 5 months
of
from
course
now,
they
6
could.
months from now, when we have to either pay James Harden or he decides he doesn't want to do it. Like it could look
Yeah.
real bad in 4 months if he
Well,
does walk.
so Harden took his option. He's not going to
He
walk.
did take his walk. You're right. You're
Harden
right.
took his year option, so he's going to get 49 million next year. That's fine. It's after that when you have to
That's
pay
what I mean.
him,
Yep.
where it could potentially, again, depending on Harden's game age, he's going to be paid a lot of money. Like we're talking upwards of $60 million when he's 38 years old. Like that is a lot of money, no matter who you are, no matter how
Hmm.
many contracts there are coming out in the NBA now. But at the end of the day, you're right. This is the cost of doing business. We cannot sit on this podcast for weeks and tell you until we're blue in the face about how the Sixers need to make a move and how they are wasting
Hmm.
Embiid's prime and how you're so close to championship contention and how you can't afford to waste seasons and then be worried about giving up Seth Curry and
Yeah.
Andre Drummond for James Harden. That's the cost of doing business. That's the cost of getting a superstar. And that's why you
Well.
accumulate talent to be able to put yourself in a position to make moves like this. The craziest part for me is that everyone who played hardball won. Morey said he wasn't traded Ben
Mhm.
Simmons until he got a superstar, and he came back with James freaking Harden. And Ben Simmons just straight up didn't show up for the Sixers after he signed a 4-year or a 5-year max contract. Said, "I'm done playing here.
I'm good.
I'm willing to sit out and lose all this money." It's so in a way hardball won too with all this, but
Well,
everybody kind of got what they wanted.
I would say to the other angle for the Sixers side as to how it could get ugly down the line is those 2 picks, first rounders that we sent. The Sixers do not have a lot of first round picks now going forward. So, um, wiggle room, I guess is the word I'm looking for, is going to be kind of thin. And depending on what you do in the off seasons is going to be kind of thin because you don't have first rounders to work with to pick or to dangle out there for trades. Um, so that part's something to keep in the back of our minds as well. Again, that's in the off season. Let's see
Oh,
what happens this season.
this could go terribly wrong.
Yeah,
Like, I understand that school of thinking completely. And I understand that, like, here's the thing James Harden and Chris Paul clashing the way they did in Houston when they were so close to a title is a red flag. Like, there's a history here with Harden, too, that
right.
we have to factor in. Like, did Ben Simmons quit
So,
on the team? Absolutely. Did I want Ben Simmons going 150%?
mhm,
James Harden also kind of pushed his way out of Brooklyn after pushing his way out of Houston.
yes.
I'm not gonna be a hypocrite just because he's on my basketball team now. That
Oh, I will.
that matters. Well, no, I know. Harden says he's serious about winning. This is your chance. Prove it.
Yeah,
Then play with Joel Embiid, buy into the vibes, buy into the system, and go win some meaningful basketball games. Like I think personally, though, I mean, yeah, I think a lot of people thought Harden and Embiid would do a lot of pick and roll. Embiid doesn't really catch lobs like
right,
that. Like he's not a
right.
like DeAndre Ayton, for example, has that great chemistry with Chris Paul where they work the lob game really well. Like obviously go back to Houston with Clint Capella, with Harden and
Mhm.
Capella, that
Mhm.
type of deal. I don't really think you're going to see that with Embiid, but I still think this is going to work extremely well. I hope the Sixers are a little active in the buyout market. I'd like to see them get another backup big. Look, Paul Millsap is great, and I think he's going to be fine in that role. But at the end of the day, Paul Millsap is 37 years old at this
I
point.
think it's
Great for the locker room, but I think they should get a buyout guy too.
I think it's telling that most trade blogs that you read about the Sixers and the Nets, like, Millsap's mentioned in the last sentence. It's like, "Oh,
Yeah,
and
like
this happened."
Yeah, like Millsap is like, look, he's a great locker room guy. He's going to be playing bench minutes. But for me
Mhm.
too, like you said, it's about who the Sixers kept. Like, yeah, they gave up a lot, but you didn't give up Maxi, who looks like he could become a star in his own right. You didn't give up Tybal, who I think who you're going to need his defense come
Yeah,
playoff time. Like he more than anyone is going to be huge. And oh, by the way, like Danny Green is still here. Like Danny Green was mentioned in a lot of the early rumors. Like maybe I'm just like I don't know. Maybe I'm an irrational Danny Green guy, but like he's won 3 titles on 3 different teams. Like I just think he's one of those guys you want in your locker room come playoff time, who knows how to just play playoff basketball. Um, and so in that case, I'm excited about who they have. I'd like to see them add another ball handler as well. But the bench is solid. It's not great, but like they brought in James freaking Harden. Like, of course there's risk with it, but like, what are we talking about here? Like, this went from a Sixers team that was pretty clearly capped, in my opinion. Like, I didn't really think the Sixers were getting beyond the
Oh.
second round this year, where now there's a viable path to win the Eastern Conference. I don't think they're the favorites right this second. I got to see how the chemistry plays the
Sure,
same way I got
sure.
to see how the chemistry plays with Brooklyn. I think Milwaukee now is probably still the definitive favorite in the Eastern
I
Conference.
don't know, man. The Heat are look I mean, they're number ones again. Like,
So
they started cooking again.
the Heat's bench is really, really good. Like the Heat's
Yeah,
bench is smoking teams right now. The Heat's starting lineup, though, is not as good as other one. Now, granted, they've dealt with a lot of injuries too. Like Bam missed a
sure.
significant amount of time. Jimmy
Mhm.
Butler's missed some time this year, and Miami's right there too. Like I guess that's the other greater point with the Eastern Conference. Like I think Milwaukee is the favorite. I do think Milwaukee is a step above Miami. I think Brooklyn and Philly have the potential to be above. So who's the weak link in the Eastern Conference right now? Like the Nets have lost 10 straight, so they've slid all the way down to 8. But it's like, look at the top 8 right now. Boston's won 6 in a row. They're playing much better basketball. Toronto's won 8 in a row. We're going to talk about them a little bit later in
Yep.
the podcast, but they're surging up the standings and playing great ball right now.
Celtics are 8
You
and
got the
2.
Sixers, you got the
Yeah,
Bucks, you got the Bulls who've been playing great and are going to get healthier once you get Caruso and once you get Lonzo Ball back. Cleveland's been great all year. Miami, like you just mentioned, has been great all year. This 1 through 8, like there's no easy first round matchup there. Like every one of these teams is going to bring it come playoff time, and that's not even include. I mean, that's not including if Atlanta gets in. We obviously saw what they did last year, got to the conference finals, and then I think it drops a little bit. Like no disrespect to Charlotte, but that's kind of where the dividing line is to me. But that 1 through 8 is going to be a dogfight in the Eastern Conference this year.
yeah. No, I agree. I'm trying to pick if I had to. I don't want to upset any fan bases. I was trying to see which one
Oh,
I would
come
say is
on. Give me a
the.
break.
I mean, look, if I'm going to pick 2, okay, 2 teams in the 8 that I trust the least to make a push or be going the furthest, and it would have to be, and I know I'm gonna get hate for this, would be the Raptors or the Cavs, just because we haven't seen it consistently this year, but the Cavs are a younger team. I know, listen, I know what
Uh,
you're coming from. I understand where you're coming from, but just off name recognition, teams we've seen in the past up here, those are the 2. I know the Raptors have been there, but the team has changed a lot. Those are the 2 that are like the quote unquote newbies.
don't sleep on Toronto, man. I'm
I'm
telling
I'm
you,
not
that
sleeping.
Toronto is scary. Like they're
I
dangerous.
know, I
Siakam
know.
has been outrageous the last month
I
and a half.
I understand that, and they're doing this small ball thing, but will that hold up down the line? Siakam's playing
I think
center
they're
at
way
times.
better than Boston, put it that way.
Okay.
I think Toronto is significantly better than Boston. Like Toronto is like to me they're closer to 5 in terms of teams. Like I think I would
I'm
rather play Cleveland than Toronto. I would borderline rather play Chicago than Toronto. Like Toronto just come playoff time, like the core has won the finals before at the end of the day. Like I know Kawhi's
yeah,
not there, but all those guys have meaningful experience.
yeah.
Like Fred VanVleet keeps getting better. Oh man, I don't want Toronto come playoff time. And I think they're really well coached with Nick Nurse.
again, this I'm not saying I hate these teams. They're just the ones that if I was forced, gun to my head, to pick 2 teams off of this list, like the Celtics, I wanna see what they look like with White now. They have a point guard, I guess, like a more of a quote unquote "true point guard," like
Yeah. Oh,
Smart's
and they're
that
playing
defensive
way
guy.
better. Like the Celtics are
Yeah.
playing significantly better basketball than the last month or so.
Mhm.
Yeah, I know like I said, there's no one out. I mean, avoiding those playing games are going to be key because right now
Yeah.
the Raptors are in 6. They have a game on the
Well,
Celtics,
and you would
and the Sixers have
imagine
2 on the Celtics, and so you got to avoid that play-in too.
you'd imagine, I mean, like the Nets, they've lost their last 10 in a row, but now the team's different, probably energized. Like, I would put a good amount of cash on the Nets rising up this chart before playoff time?
Yeah, I think the Nets for sure get into 6, and then I don't like. I'm not worried about Milwaukee
But
falling
and
off.
now at the end of the day, the other thing, and I know we always do this every year, but the other thing to keep in mind is the Heat are 36 and 20, okay? And we're talking
Mhm.
about how competitive the East is going to be. 36 and 20 would be fourth in the Western Conference by like at least 3 games.
So I think the West is inflated, and
You
it's the
think?
first time I've said that in a while. And now let
Ah,
me let me clarify here. The West is extremely good, and I think the teams like Phoenix to me is probably the best team in basketball right now. Like if we're
gotta
doing
be.
the power rankings, I think Phoenix is number one. Like they're crushing in clutch time. Like they look motivated like last year. Aiton's playing even better than he was towards the end of last year, and he looks motivated to not just get
He's
paid, but to kind of have redemption in the finals as well.
right.
Like obviously Chris Paul's still hungry for ring number one, and Book is just so good at the end of games. Um, no, I think so. Phoenix is there. Golden State, I think, is there too because again, Draymond's hurt. Steph's been in and out of the lineup. They're getting Clay back, so I think there's some adjustment there. And,
Grizzlies.
and I think Memphis and Utah and even Dallas are playing a lot better recently. We'll see again what
We'll
Dallas looks
talk
like. We'll
about
get to them in a sec, but
yeah.
I don't know. Like a lot of those other teams, like the Clippers have injuries, the Nuggets have injuries, the Timberwolves are a prove it team to me. The Lakers are 9 and they stink out loud. The Pelicans kind of stink, even with getting CJ McCollum. Like,
They're a
and then the
lot
bottom of
yeah.
that conference is so much worse than I think it is in the East. Like Portland, Sacramento, San Antonio, Oklahoma City, and Houston all would be like well below the Wizards and the Knicks, who we are all talking about how they're not doing great right now in the Eastern Conference. So I do think it's inflated in the sense that the West teams get to beat up on some other bad teams the way that East teams don't necessarily this year. Like it's weird because the shoe's kind of on the other foot. But I think the
Mhm.
top of the West is elite, 100%. Like Golden
Okay.
State and Phoenix, especially Phoenix, are as good as it gets.
Okay. I get what you're saying. I think we'll talk about them, because they did some trading. You mentioned it with CJ
Yeah.
McCollum, but the
Yeah, we got a
Pelicans
lot of other trades to talk about. But listen, if the Sixers and
yeah.
Harden click, they can win the East, and that's all that matters. Like, if you want to push it all in and you think this is Embiid's prime, like the way we've been beating the drum that it is, like you don't waste seasons like this. And going to get James Harden is a more than way to prove that you are
Mhm.
dead serious about not wasting this season. Let's see if they can put it together. If Harden says he wants to be a winner, let's go win some basketball games.
Do
Listen,
it.
nobody out there is listen. That fan base is going to be hungry, and it's going to be ravenous on the 10th when the Nets come to town.
And nobody, at least from what I've been watching in terms of the media, and a lot of the stuff I was getting sent was from my New York friends. So the New York media was having a field day with Harden, which to I say, go back to when you got him and let's hear what you said about him then, because I feel like it's a complete 180. So
Yeah, of course it is. Just like
mhm.
look, everybody's takes are
Will it
let's play some basketball.
will it be the exact same for us? When it comes
Oh,
time
it
to
could
pay
be. Look,
Harden, it could be.
I forget who it was. I think it was that dude Ahmed, big business on Twitter or whatever, who tweeted, he's like, man, if Harden and Embiid and Doc Rivers flame out in the second round, and I'm like,
Oh,
oh my God, I'm ready to I can already see that happening, but we don't need to go down that hole. I don't want to get negative. We're super excited. Who are we kidding? Like let's not let not your hearts be troubled. This is the best day for
mhm.
Sixers fans in quite a long time. Welcome everybody to the Drive and Dish NBA podcast. My name is Kevin Rayfuse. Joining me as always, my co-host Justin Kuzart.
Hashtag Team Durant.
So who we got? We got Rudy. Was it Rudy?
It was not Rudy,
It should have been
point
Rudy.
guard.
Rudy should have been trolling like that.
Rudy should have been all over it, which we will talk about that in depth. I have it as one of my balling and falling, so
Charles Barkley
we'll
put
get
up
into
100
that.
points. So we're going to talk about that. But Charles
Ooh.
Barkley was unbelievable.
It was that whole the whole thing was amazing. Like I know we hated on LeBron and KD being the captains, but honestly, LeBron's part in the whole thing, he played right into it, and I'm so happy he was there.
It was incredible. Everything about it was incredible. KD being on brand was incredible. We'll get into that in a little bit. Leave us a review on iTunes. Wait, actually, who was the tweet?
John Morant.
Oh, it's John Morant. Okay. Well, welcome to Team Durant, John Morant. Wow, that is way harder to
Durant,
say than
Morant.
I expected. Leave us a review on iTunes, good or bad. We'll read them on the podcast. If you're not an Apple user, Stitcher, Google Play Store, Spreaker, Spotify, TuneIn, Amazon Music, anywhere you can find a podcast, you can find us.
Yep, and find us on YouTube. You can find Drive and Dish NBA. I'm trying to take a quick look to see if we got lucky subscriber number 31.
We get Reggie Miller.
Hold on. We did. Yes, we did get
Nice.
number 31. So
Oh,
who's
oh,
32? We
32
gotta.
is Magic Johnson. That's easy.
Okay,
That's a
okay.
good
We'll go
one.
with
That's a good
Magic.
one too. We're at some good numbers right now.
Yeah. So who wants to be the Magic Johnson of our YouTube subscribers? You can find us on
You
YouTube.
got to
Just
tweet like
search
him too. That's the thing. If you become the Magic Johnson, you got to start tweeting like him too.
or yeah, comment on our videos like him, and we'll just be confused as hell. I like that. So yeah, we will be sure to find us there. You just search Drive and Dish NBA on YouTube.
Now, a word from our sponsors.
So let's get into a few more of the trade deadline trades that were happening. I was trying to do my best to keep up with Woj, who was rapid firing them, but a team that feels like they were very active. Uh, and I guess depending on how you feel about the team in a positive way or a negative way, depending, were the Portland Trailblazers. They got rid of a lot of people,
Yeah.
I guess, to say the least. So it does feel like a blow it up now move for the Trailblazers. I guess the first one we can start with would be the biggest news from the Trailblazers and sending CJ McCollum to the Pelicans. Again, CJ McCollum was essentially the part two to Dame and their offensive attack. So I guess if they were going to move on, him being the first to go would kind of make the most sense.
Well, yeah, if you're not going to trade, so they went all the way in to blow it up, and if you're not going to trade Damian Lillard, then yeah, I think you 100% trade CJ McCollum. Like that's a good way to get players back. But it was interesting this year, like more than any, because I mean, essentially the Trailblazers, he became expendable because of the emergence of Anthony Simons. Like Simons has been playing so well that you know, he became just less of a vital part of this roster. Now I know he's missed a lot of time this year too, but um, yeah, it became. I think it became a lot easier given injuries and the way this season has played out to blow
Sure.
this roster up and to part with CJ McCollum.
Right.
Obviously, for Portland, like this is the end of an era. You know, Dame and CJ have been playing together. You know, they're both drafted by this squad. Like they're a part of one of the best backcourts in team history. Um, but at the end of the day, it was definitely time. Now, I'm interested to see where Portland goes going forward. And I liked this particular deal way better than their other deal. And that, so I guess we should talk about Portland in the vacuum of it because they also traded Norman Powell and Robert Covington to the Clippers for Eric Bledsoe, Justice Winslow, Keon Johnson, and a 2025 second. The CJ McCollum deal was for Josh Hart, Thomas Satoransky, Nikhil Alexander Walker, Didu
Now,
Lazada, and a 22 protected first round pick. So it's like, and 2 seconds. So it's like you got your first round pick for CJ. You got Josh Hart, who will have some value, and they already flipped Nikhil Walker Alexander, who
well,
will
and that's what I wanted to talk about. Alexander, I mean, he's what, a third year player. So, like, to me, for a team that's blowing it up and quote unquote starting over, wouldn't you want a young player like that? I know his numbers haven't been great this year, but he has a higher upside. So I
yeah.
kind of thought they were going to roll with him and at least develop or see what happens down the line with him.
Yeah, I was a little surprised that they flipped him to Utah as part of the Ingles deal.
Yes.
Obviously, Ingles isn't going to play the rest of the year, so that's a perfect salary filler move essentially for Portland. Um, excuse me. Yeah, I was a little surprised though by not keeping out Alexander Walker. Like you said, his numbers have been down. Like he's somebody that's been pretty disappointing for the Pelicans overall. Like he was one of your breakout candidates for the year like you said, third-year player, that's exactly who you take the swing on. And for Utah, I think that is a good move. Even if he stinks and doesn't give you anything, and his numbers just are exactly what they were in New Orleans, he's still young. Like those are the players that you buy low on and take a flyer on. So I liked, honestly, I was a little surprised they did flip him, but getting the first rounder was the biggest thing at the end of the day for CJ McCollum, and so I think that that was great. The Pelicans pick is going to be higher, so I think that that's what basically I think that's the key of what you were looking for there. Man, I gotta be honest, that Norm Powell, Robert Covington deal was terrible. Are you kidding me? Like, that's what you got for those guys? I mean, great deal for the Clippers. Like, that's an A+ deal for the Clippers for me, bringing both those guys in. I mean, Norm Powell's first game, he dropped what, like 30 points or something like that. He already, you're getting immediate results there, if you will. But Covington was a guy who, on his own, I thought a lot of contenders were interested in just for his wing defense come playoff time. Obviously, he can shoot the basketball as well. Norm Powell's another guy who can just, again, score a lot of points in a hurry. Has pretty much played well at every stop he's been in. I was surprised that, Keon Johnson, again, is a young player, but for Eric Bledsoe, who they're probably going to buy out, and Justice Winslow in a second rounder, like that's what you got for those two guys. Like those are guys that I thought most contenders probably would have been interested in. So to me, I don't understand what Portland was thinking. Like I get it from the rebuilding perspective, but man, I think they really just misjudged the value on both those guys there.
I think so too. For really, at the end of the day, the only kind of future picks you got out of that is a 2025 second rounder. Like, I feel like there could have been more picks involved for a team that's going to be looking to get younger, draft some players like that. I kind of agree with you there, where Norman Powell, Robert Covington, if they're in the conversation, you should be able to grab a little bit more. And like for the Blazers, like, yeah, like you were saying with Eric Bledsoe, you don't need that on your team right now. You
Yeah.
don't need older players, veterans on your team. You need picks and young people.
Well, and before we flip to New Orleans real quick, because I do want to talk about that. I guess
Yeah,
it's interesting because, well, I'm surprised Nurkic didn't get moved, number one, because Larry Nance
true.
got moved as well. Like Larry Nance isn't on the roster anymore. He went to New Orleans. Um, I'm a little surprised. Like, what do you think Portland does here? Because Dame Lillard has indicated that he's going to stay, which is obviously great. Like, he still has a ton of value. He's been dealing with the injury this year. But realistically, like you're not going to be good again for 3, 4 years unless you just nail every draft pick that you got. And these guys are all instant contributors like that. Again, they have some young talent on that roster. They're not completely devoid of it. Simons has been awesome. I think he and Lillard, you can have a really solid backcourt there. Again, Nurkic is still on the roster, depending what happens there as well. He's a solid player, but man, does it feel like it's time for Dame and Portland to break up? And it's saying that for to benefit them mutually. Like I know you don't want to say goodbye for Portland, but it just feels like you could accelerate this rebuild so much faster if you trade Damian Lillard.
You're not wrong. I agree because obviously, if you go with picks or young players for Dame, you're gonna get a haul back. Um, Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, I know he's your star, but at the end of the day, go let him go to a team and contend.
Well, and
Let
for
him let him try to get a ring. He's not going to
well,
do it with Portland right now.
Well, but if he doesn't really just doesn't want to move and is steadfast with leaving in Portland, but it's like Dame has kind of complained about this stuff in the past, and it just feels like yeah, it feels like there's a beneficial solution here for both parties. Like I'm sure there's disappointment that they didn't get a title there in Portland together, and that team
Sure.
didn't hit the heights that it could have. But it's like they made the Western Conference Finals. Damian Lillard is an all-time great in Portland. His jersey's going to be retired. Like he's had as good of a career as you could possibly really have in there, short of a championship. Why not go chase one right now? Like
Yeah.
and help your team out in the process. Like help the next generation of Blazers keep
Yeah.
going. Like I don't like again, I don't think it's the end of the world. And if Dame stays loyal and finishes his career with one team, I don't think that's like I'm not trying to kick Dame off Portland. I'm not one of those
But
people
if he
now.
but if he does that, the talk about Dame's going to be, man, what if he had left? What if he had gone to another team and been able to, get a ring or something like that? Like the legacy of it will be, yes, he was loyal, but almost to a fault.
Yeah, well, and that's kind of where it's at now. I think both of them
Yeah.
have been loyal to a fault. It's like help each other out now. Like
Yeah.
And it's not going to happen this year. Like Damian Lillard dealing with the injuries this year. Like I think he maybe gets back on the court, but I don't think we're going to see a
Why
well.
why
Now,
though?
obviously,
Why
the
even rush
deadline's
it?
passed, but like, yeah, exactly. Like there can be a mutually beneficial solution here where you can again, you guys can help each other out here. I'm really interested to see what happens there and to see if
So
Portland shifts into the full rebuild come like once we hit summertime, essentially.
so something that came out of this though, and you mentioned wanting to talk about the Pelicans. I am like really intrigued to see CJ Williamson and Ingram on the court together.
Well, and that's why I think they did this. I mean, more importantly, like the Pelicans are trying to build legitimacy around Zion and incentivize Zion to stay. They've got one really good player in Brandon Ingram. Now you come in and get a legitimate player in CJ McCollum. They're in play-in position as we speak, albeit by a half game. But Portland, like we said, is blowing it up. I don't expect Portland to keep winning basketball games. I think they're going in the other direction. The Lakers,
Mhm.
as we know, are going nowhere fast. Granted, they're still 3.5 behind the Lakers, even with the Lakers being as bad as they've been recently, but they're 6-4 right now in their last 10. And you go in and you get CJ McCollum, like they're going to improve. They get into play in position, and you say, hey, we were able to be 9-10 in the West potentially without our best player. We have three guys to build around. We can make a run at the playoffs next year. Like, why could, New Orleans could look at a Minnesota and say, look what happens when we have everybody healthy finally and playing together. Look what we can do together. Um, and I think that's the most important thing is like CJ McCollum is not going to win them a title right now, but he may set the groundwork for this team to start being competitive and get back into the playoffs and more importantly keep Zion happy. And so I think that's the cost of doing business here.
Yeah.
And I think it for sure gets them into play-in territory this year. Like I think it will solidify that bringing CJ McCollum on that roster. Obviously, it instantly improves it.
Yeah, I completely agree. I'd also throw, Valanciunas in that conversation
Oh
too to
yeah, he's
see
been
him
hooping all
him with
year.
them. Yeah, I'm just like, again, I know we haven't seen Williamson all season, and who knows what's going on there and his happiness level or whatever, but I if I'm Williamson, I wanna do it now. I wanna get on the court with these guys, and I wanna see what we can do because, like you said, CJ's not gonna push them into the contention, but the thought process is Williamson is supposed to be that guy. He's the number 1 pick. He's the one that is supposed to be pushing them forward. Now there's a ton of shooting around you, Graham too, let's see it now. Get on the
Yeah.
court and let's get some wins going. And
Yeah.
and hey, maybe make a play in or make a low seeded playoffs. Like, let's do it. Let's
They do
see it now.
And they do wonder sometimes. Like meaningful basketball matters. Look what it
Yes.
did for Phoenix. Look what it's done for Memphis. Like them getting that experience will only help them short term. And like you said, the good thing with CJ McCollum is he probably has to be the third best player on this roster. Like realistically, Zion and Brandon Ingram should both be ahead of them. All right, let's go back to the East. Indy traded Karis LeVert and a 2022 second round pick to the Cavs for Ricky Rubio, a lottery protected 22 first, and a pair of 2022 seconds. Indy we'll talk about a little bit more because we're going to talk about the Sabonis trade and the Tyrese Halliburton trade. So I'll move off Indy for a second, talk about the Cleveland element of it first. And to me, again, this is exactly what you want to do if you're Cleveland. What I've loved about Cleveland is they haven't wasted any time this year. Like
Hmm.
it's a damn shame Ricky Rubio got hurt, and that's why I really kind of feel bad for in this because Rubio was playing phenomenal at the beginning of the year, was exactly what the Cavs are looking for. But when Rubio went down for the year, they went out and signed Rondo right away, or they made the deal for Rondo, bringing him in, bring that veteran leadership there to play his role essentially. And now to go out and get Karis LeVert to get a wing that they kind of needed a little bit here to pair with Okoro. I love this move for the Cavs. Like this is exactly what you do. You see you got a good squad right now, and you go for it. You take a swing. I think Levert is worth a first rounder that's lottery protected for sure. I mean, we've seen he can do it. If nothing else, he can score. He's got great chemistry with Jared Allen. Um, to me, he fills out this roster. He just makes it complete. Like I look at the Cavs starting lineup, and they're a unit. Like they're ready to play. This is a team that's built for the playoffs. And to me, it's saying, hey, we're not afraid of being overachievers right now. Like we're here, we're good. We believe in our young guys. We believe in our vets, and we're going to take a swing at this thing this year. I love this move for the Cavs. I think this is exactly what they needed to do.
Yep, yep. And down the line, Levert is going to be available for an extension. And given everything they gave up to get him, you would assume that's the plan.
Yeah,
Colin Sexton as well is another person who will be
that's an interesting. See, that's gonna be interesting.
restricted free agent. So, but I think in a way it kind of shows like Garland and Sexton as their guys, and then they're surrounding them with the players that they want. You know, you've got a good squad there, and I know I said they were one of my teams that I wasn't confident in at the beginning of the episode, but that's just because they're younger and they haven't proven it yet. But I like what they're building. I like where they're at with it.
It's just crazy because Sexton's played so many good minutes for them, and he's now probably expendable. Like you could move Colin Sexton, get a ton for it, and he'd be in a great situation as well, just because of how well Garland has played. Like
Hmm.
Garland and Mobley are the two that you just build it all around, no matter what. Um,
Yep.
the only thing with Levert is I hope he plays within the flow of the offense. Like I don't want to see Levert become a black hole and just start playing a lot of ISO. Early indications on that are pretty good. Obviously, this is probably the first big move of the deadline. But yeah, no, this is a great trade for the Cavs. For the Pacers, I mean, because the Pacers semi blew it up here, and that's the thing. So you move on from Levert and you move on from Sabonis, which I think breaks up one of the log jams that we've not a log jam, but we've talked about it for a while. Where
Him and
you know,
Miles Turner. Yeah.
yeah, the Indies, both of them are great players. Indies not really winning basketball games right now. I don't like my first reaction was I hated this trade for the Kings, and then I thought it was just ridiculous because I'm really high on Tyrese Halliburton still. Like to me, he was the crown jewel, if you will, of the young guys the Kings had. Like I honestly think he has more upside than De'Aaron Fox does.
Well,
I know,
to that, the other argument to that I was reading about is if you could make this trade and just switch out Fox, I know it would be different because money and all that stuff, but Fox is making the max, Halliburton's making the rookie scale contract. So like
yeah.
money saving wise, it also would kind of fit. Now, again, who knows if there was a conversation about Fox or maybe the Pacers didn't want him, whatever. But that, to your point, is an argument I saw a lot of people making. Is like, well, could you have included him? And he's playing better, so maybe it would have changed the look of the trade a little bit.
Now the counterpoint for that with the Kings is Halliburton is more potential where it's like, you know
True.
what you got with De'Aaron
You
Fox.
got
Like you've got
Fox.
6
Yep.
years of De'Aaron Fox now at this point. You know what it is a known quantity. And same deal with Sabonis. Like Domantas Sabonis is a talented player. Like that's the thing. And that's where it kind of became hard for me to totally dump on the Kings because no, Sabonis does improve them in the short term right now. And it does clear up a little bit of a logjam of their own that they granted self-created with Halliburton and Davion Mitchell when they drafted him this year. But it's like, okay, so now you're committed to De'Aaron Fox, you're committed to Davion Mitchell being your guard, who, again, first rounder now doesn't seem as poorly spent because you go out and you get a guy like Sabonis. Like, you know, I don't know what the Kings are going to do. They're going to definitely jump Portland, but I think they can be in that play-in contention now. Like Sabonis is a genuinely good player. Like I know a
Yeah.
lot of people just look at his box scores and are like, oh, he's a stat patter. I don't believe that at all. This is a good get for the Kings, and I think this is one that has aged better. Now, obviously,
And
if Halliburton goes crazy and becomes a star, then I think
it looks
maybe
bad.
this doesn't age quite as well. But
And
there is a potential bet with Halliburton a little more than with De'Aaron Fox, so I understand that
yeah.
thinking.
Well, and I would say you look at the on paper the squad that that the Pacers can now put out there. I mean, with Turner, Halliburton, Heald, Brogdon, Dort, like I don't hate that either. I like that going forward. I don't see why that couldn't be awesome. You got a young
Mhm.
backcourt that can develop together. I believe they're both under 25. So like I kind of like it for the Pacers
Yeah.
too.
And Tristan Thompson's a buyout candidate. There were rumors
Yes,
that they were going
yeah.
to move Buddy Hield again because, obviously he's a name that came up a lot at the deadlines. But
Mhm.
Indy's not even in total rebuild. Like it's a slight reset because, like you said, you keep Miles Turner, who is again a talented player in his own right, who now has less of an awkward fit with Sabonis. Malcolm Brogdon is going to come back and be healthy eventually as well, so that'll give them a boost a little bit. Like you said, I
Mhm.
like them getting Buddy. I think Tristan Thompson like probably gets bought out. That's actually somebody if he gets bought out, I'd like the Sixers to go after. Um, but this is it's a good way for Indy to reset without totally blowing it up. Like I
Mhm.
appreciate that. I think they got some value here. Because getting the first round pick is huge too. Like the Cavs' first round pick is not going to be super high this year, but again, build up the war chest.
So
This Indies team is not going to win anything this year, like we said.
the
But
other, the I guess the other one, as we're talking about the Kings and all them, the Kings were involved in another trade, which involved like 19,000 teams, between the Bucks, Clippers, Kings, and Detroit Pistons. So the Bucks got Ibaka, and we'll just talk about the Kings part of it, but they got Devonte DiVincenzo, who I think also will be an underrated pickup for them. Like I really like that move. Um, we saw him perform really well last year. Obviously, the injury in the playoffs was super disheartening for him and everything. And I know he wanted to stay with the Bucks. I saw an interview with him saying that, but I think he's going to be another underrated pickup for the Kings because his numbers are kind of low this year right now.
he's a
But
big
I,
part of that rotation.
yeah, yeah,
Like
that's what I agree.
anybody who's a part of a championship rotation like that and who can shoot the basketball, I'm super always okay taking a flyer on. It's unfortunate for the Bucks a little bit with the timing because now Pat Connaughton,
Yeah.
well, I guess that's kind of given my fall in a way, but Pat Connaughton has this thumb injury. Actually, I'll pivot. Okay, so I was going to do Pat Connaughton as my fallen. He has this injury now
Yeah.
with the broken finger. And so that's just, that kind of hurts their depth a little bit. It's like, well, crap, we wish we would have had DiVincenzo for those moments. But no, I think getting Ibaka is a good pickup for the Bucks. The Clippers got Rodney Hood and Semi Ojale. And then the
Well, and I
Kings,
would
Marvin Bagley is finally free from the Kings. I know his dad's been yelling on that for Twitter for a while.
I
And
would
the
say from the Ibaka side of it, though, I think that's kind of telling for what the Bucks feel the potential of Brook Lopez coming back is.
Yeah,
You
agreed,
know?
100%. And now he was on the road trip with them.
Yeah.
Like they were in Phoenix last night. They lost to Phoenix, but like so that is encouraging. But yeah, like you said, I think even if Brook Lopez comes back, like there's going to be an element of easing into it. So Ibaka, certainly boost that front court a little bit. I think that's a great point, Justin. Um, Trey Lyles and Josh Jackson are going back to the Kings in that four-teamer as well. Honestly, I really like it for Detroit. Like Marvin Bagley is exactly the type of guy you take a flyer on. Like I think you look at Bagley and you just go, man, he's been stuck in Sacramento and it hasn't worked out. And they're not even giving him playing time. Again, that's one of those things where even if he stinks, it didn't really cost you anything. So I 100% take the flyer on Marvin Bagley.
Yeah, and I would say too, I mean, if it doesn't work out, then you just move on in the off season, you know? Like
Right.
it's not a high risk thing to do. So
It's one of those
why not go
deals that,
for it?
yeah, it's one of those deals that teams like Detroit, who are in that mindset right now, should be inserting themselves in that could eventually pay dividends in the future. I'm not suggesting it's going to have this impact, but one of the Cavs' best moves going back to Cleveland was inserting themselves in that deal involving Jared Allen. And they basically got him as a throwaway. And now he's playing borderline all star level for them. So you never know how that can pay off. All right, who's balling, who's falling? Our NBA version of the stock market. We always like to start with the good before the bad. So, Justin, I'll start with you. Who is balling this week?
For me, it was the All-Star draft, and we teased talking about this at the beginning of the episode. We got to talk about Kevin Durant and LeBron James with the little clipboard blocking his face so that they wouldn't see him laughing. But essentially, Harden went last in the draft. I
Which
believe
is
it was,
hilarious.
well, yeah. Which I think it was Chuck that asked KD um, about the whole situation, and Kevin Durant kind of saying everybody got what they wanted, and then Chuck joking that he needs a full-time psychiatrist to deal with everything on the team. And then Braun totally LeBron's the MVP of this whole
Oh yeah,
situation because
because LeBron couldn't hold it. He couldn't hold it together at any
he
point. He just
couldn't
started
hold it
laughing.
together, but you knew it. So the last three, it was Van Vliet, Gobert, and Harden.
Uh huh.
And LeBron's up there going, all right, I could take Harden and everything's fine, or I could take Van Vliet
Right.
and
Gotta take
throw
credit.
Durant
Gotta take
right
him.
under the bus. So the fact that he did that and played into it made me so happy. And then all the guys being like, "Well, KD, you need a big man." They were steering him
Of
right to it.
course. Okay, LeBron asked if KD was done making trades for the day. I mean, my ball in this week was going to be Charles Barkley specifically because he was the MVP of that broadcast. Like that was
Well,
unbelievable. When
that's
he goes, of course
yeah.
James is healthy. He just got traded. Like there were
Well, because
so many
LeBron
and
LeBron goes, "Is he healthy? He hasn't played in a while."
Right, which exactly, again, playing the role perfectly.
Oh, he set it
KD
up.
also just was stone facing everything. Like when Ernie's like,
He
"Hey,
was
Kevin, you want to
trying.
give us any indication if you want to come back?" Nope. Just,
He was
okay.
he was trying.
Of course he was.
There were some
He
cracks
broke at the
where he
end.
laughed. Yeah.
Yeah, he broke at the end when Chuck got him with the Harden comment with the, "Oh, he's healthy now. He got traded." Like, come
He's
on.
gonna rub some icy hot on it and be good to
Yeah,
go.
you got to give it up. Charles Barkley called Kyrie Irving like half man, half a season, which is incredible. Like, oh, I mean, the whole crew is so good. Like, we could talk about that all the time, but it's like that
Mhm.
specific broadcast. Like, I was in tears the whole time. Shout out to our boy Joel Embiid too, number one on KD, leading scorer in the league. You know the vibes. All right, so falling for me this week then are the two teams that weren't involved at the trade deadline, and that's the Knicks and the Lakers. The Lakers we've talked about in depth. I'm not really going to. We don't need to do a whole diatribe on that, but
Mhm.
Russell Westbrook is just doesn't have any value with the current contract and how he's been playing. The Lakers have no picks. The Lakers have Talon Horton Tucker. Like that's just it. Like virtually every team in the NBA can offer better deals for whatever you're trying to sell than the Lakers can right now. So to them, they were a little more stuck. The Knicks are interesting because I think the Knicks were stuck to an extent, like with Evan Fournier, for example. I don't think anybody's taking Evan Fournier's contract right now.
Yeah.
Like not till it plays out a little bit at least. But Kemba's another tough situation, but not being able to move him, not moving in Alec Burks. When things have gone south too, it looks like with Julius Randle pretty quickly. It's been a tough situation. It's a tough go of it for New York. I think they maybe could have used a shake up a little bit, and
Yeah.
they just got stonewalled. Nothing at all. So we're going to see what happens in the second half of the year, but it looks like they're maybe playing for a lottery pick right now.
Yeah, and there was a lot of talk actually between those two teams trying to make a trade together. But it didn't happen. I saw a lot of New York media upset that the Knicks weren't more active, but
At least the
yeah,
Knicks have pieces that teams would want. The Lakers have
yeah,
nothing.
yeah,
Like that,
I
the
know.
Lakers are stuck. It's crazy. Like the only way the Lakers can get out of this logjam currently is, which I need to stop saying logjam. That's like the word of the. It's like the word of the episode. Would trade either LeBron or AD, and we know that's not going to happen. So what do you do there?
Maybe it will.
No, well, that's crazy. That's wild if
Maybe
they
it
move
will. Who
LeBron or AD.
knows?
That would
Well,
restock it, but
and I think we're still a few years away, but I know LeBron made those comments that he'd be cool getting
oh,
traded to
he's
play with
definitely
his
playing with LeBron's
kid.
playing
Yeah.
with Bronny. Like I think that's the logical end of LeBron's career to me. Like I think he plays a year with Bronny and then they're done. Like he
Hmm.
hangs it up and
It would be dope if they won too. Like if Bronny
yeah, it'd be
comes in
crazy.
and they go and win oh, that'd be so cool. But all right, so my fallen is actually going to be Kevin Porter Jr. He made a basket for the opposing team in the last second of the game to extend the team's lead. I don't know if you saw this Rockets
I did.
Toronto the other
It
night.
was hilarious. It was crack. I knew exactly what you were talking about. I'm so glad you brought this up.
I couldn't tell. So I saw when I was watching it, the score was 139 to 120. I don't know if his made it 141 or if 139 was with his score.
Somebody's
But
pissed betting. I know that. Somebody's
right.
real pissed
Oh, could
betting.
you imagine if the spread was right there? Like, oh boy, I could only imagine. But
Somebody took that
um
alternate spread. You know it's out there somewhere.
or like what if Kevin Porter, like, I don't know how many points he had that game, but I should look it up. But like what if, like, would if he scored that, does that too get added to his score? Like if he was, say he had 10 points and the spread was that he would score 12
Right,
in a
does it
game,
deduct too?
does it does it count as two or what? So I don't know, but it was also funny. Everyone's walking off, and they're all. I think it was Nick Nurse was like, "Wait, whoa, hey, hey wait,
That's
wait."
what I'm cracking up. I'm like, wait, Nick Nurse. I'm like, you care this much? Like, you already got the game locked up,
At the
but
end of the day, I'm sure at the end of the
gamesmanship, I
day,
respect it.
not even that, but like, could you imagine if like Nick Nurse is, I don't know, something in his contract was like if the teams are averaging a certain amount of points per game, you get a certain bonus. You know what I'm saying? Like every point counts at that point. You might as well make sure you get them. So yeah, Kevin Porter Jr. I get it. Like I don't even think he was trying to make it because he bounced it and then it went
Mhm.
in, but still kind of crazy that it did.
Yeah, it was just a wild, hilarious one. All right, let's go back to the trade deadline. Dallas traded Kristaps Porzingis to Washington for Spencer Dinwiddie and Davis Bertans. Holy crap! What a fall off for KP. It feels like. And
I
how about
feel
some
like
Latvian on Latvian violence and the Bertans and KP getting traded? I think we only got two Latvians in the league, and they happen to get traded for each other. That's crazy.
Bertans has been a little disappointing this year too,
Oh,
with the
since
with the
he signed the
contract,
contract,
the
though. He signed that
contract. Yeah.
contract, it's been terrible.
Um, the Mavs are a top 5 defense, so I was kind of surprised they did move on from Porzingis. But what my question is, are we at the point with Porzingis? I saw this in a tweet. Are we at the point with Porzingis where he's no longer a number 2 star on a team?
Yeah, I think we're pretty close. I mean, this is pretty telling more than anything. They traded for Spencer Dinwiddie and Bertans. Bertans is essentially salary filler,
I'm
more or less, or
convinced.
salary relief.
By the way, I'm convinced the only reason they made this trade is so that Mark Cuban can talk crypto with Dinwiddie, but that's besides the point.
Well, Dinwiddie was super disappointing.
Well,
Dinwiddie was super disappointing in Washington. Like, it never got
he
off the
doesn't.
ground there.
Well, but hold on. He would do fine without Beal on the court from earlier in the season. I remember us
Well,
talking
that's a
about that.
problem when you can't play with
Right, but that's
Bradley
what I mean.
Beal.
You would think like, hey, eventually you guys will mesh, but they just never did. So you got to move on. But maybe that change of scenery helps Dinwiddie kind of pop back up to where we kind of expect him to be a little bit.
Yeah. It's just
So
like, I mean, I get the trade in the sense that, like, ideally, if Dinwiddie bounces back, he gives you some more offense. You didn't
sure.
move Jalen Brunson, which is huge, and then got, if you believe in Dwight Powell and Kleber, then you think that their big men are able to hold up. It's kind of jarring. Um,
Well, what's his
that
what Luca scored like a career high last night, didn't he?
well, oh yeah, Luka went crazy last night. He
Yeah,
almost
hold on,
broke the
I'm pulling it.
franchise record. I think he hit 51. I think the franchise record was
Yeah,
53.
hold on, I'm pulling it up.
Um,
Um,
It
so
also just it's tough though because KP just couldn't get on the floor. Like that, at the end of the day, in 3 seasons he played 134 games with Dallas. Like, it gets to a point where the best thing in sports is availability. He was productive at times, and other times he looked completely lost.
So, just on the Luca thing for anybody wondering, last night against the Clippers, in 39 minutes, he was 17 for 26, which is 65% field goal, 7 for 14 at 3% or 3% 3-point percentage, 9 rebounds, 6 assists, for a total of 51 points.
Okay,
So I
that's
but maybe we expect more of that out of Luka going forward now,
well. He had
because
20. I mean, he had 28 in the first quarter. That's just was crazy. It was like,
yeah.
oh man, he's on a heater pace.
Mhm.
I'm a little I don't know. I'm a little surprised, I guess, with how this ended, and I know it was always messy too, because it felt like there was some off the court stuff. But I mean, you mentioned Dallas's defense. Like, Porzingis is a pretty good rim protector this year. Um, Again, it's the missed games, but he was looking all right when he played, and I guess that's why I'm surprised. Like, I get being upset with or being done with the Porzingis experience. Like, if you
Yeah.
don't think this is your guy and he's not your number two, and you just don't feel like investing all the resources off the court, then so be it. I understand what you're doing there, but like, Dinwiddie has been horrible. Like, I don't think we real like I don't know if I properly put in perspective how bad Spencer Dinwiddie has been in Washington. Like, he's shooting like 31% from beyond the arc. I think he's only
Yeah,
averaging
31.
14 points, and he's under contract. So, does it feel like they undersold here a little bit? I feel like you got something for Porzingis.
I mean, yes, I wonder if you go back to the beginning of the season with Dinwiddie. I mean, there's been, at the beginning he was cooking. He was putting up 20 points per game in a few games here. I'm trying to get an average for you from Basketball Reference. But so I think Dallas's side of it is, okay, can we get him back to those kind of production points? I don't know if you can, because like you were saying, with the 30-point games, with the 20-point games, you'd also have a 6-point game or a 12-point game right after it. So it does feel like a little bit of an undersell, but with Porzingis, man, like you already referenced this, like we never know if he's how healthy he's going to be. Injuries are a real problem with him right now.
Yeah, and I mean, look, they're trying to get Luca help come playoff time. Like, I understand the thinking is that they want to get him some help on the offensive end. If Dinwiddie bounces back, I mean, if Bertans bounces back, like, if this can look a lot better on that front. I'm just again, Porzingis would be good for 10 games. It felt like, and then would be out, and then would be dominating for another 10. I'm just, man, I get one to move on, but it just feels like this was an undersell. Like, is there no one better out there? Like, is Porzingis' value really this low that this is all you could get? Washington stinks. You want their cast-offs? I'm surprised. I
Uh,
really am. I thought they
but
just could have got a
like,
little bit more.
is there another team that comes to mind that you think, oh, they should that they probably would have considered a Porzingis trade?
If the price is that low, sure.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
Dinwiddie for that contract is not good. Like, that's the
Yeah.
thing is like the production is not there right now, but we shall see. It does feel like a little bit of an undersell. I'm not gonna lie. All
Mhm.
right, let's go to Boston. Boston sent Dennis Schroeder, Enos Freedom,
I keep
and
get when I saw that I was like, "Who?" Oh, right. Okay.
right. And Bruno Fernando to Houston for Daniel Tice. Actually, Enos Cantor is getting bought out.
Yep.
Enos Cantor Freedom. I'm really not trying to be disrespectful, I promise. But he is going to get bought out, so we'll see if he ends up somewhere. Schroeder to Houston.
I'm sure a contender will pick him up,
Well,
right?
this is kind of a win-win. What, you think so?
For freedom?
Oh, I don't think they will.
No?
No, not at this point.
Okay.
I think the fact that he's bouncing out of Boston, I don't know.
Bad sign.
No, he's just not really ever been that good defensively, and I don't think the offense
Yeah,
is there to kind of balance it out at this point. Like, he's pretty much a
sure.
bench guy at this point. I kind of like this move for Boston. They got under the salary floor, but they didn't stink either. Like, they needed a kind of a backup big. Rob Williams was playing really well. Horford's been playing well, but you
Mhm.
go out and get Daniel Tice, who's had a ton of success there before. That's kind of where he basically got put on the map. He's familiar with the system. To come in and play that backup big role, like Dennis Schroeder wasn't working. He was pretty terrible. Um,
Poor
so
Schroeder, man. What a fall off.
yeah, I mean, he got paid at least this year. Like, he got, a contract.
Not
Um,
not as much as he thought he would have.
I know. I'm trying not to rub it in.
Okay.
But no, I think getting Tice and then in the move as well with the Spurs with trading Josh Richardson and Romeo Langford for Derek White, like you, it was kind of it raised eyebrows when they were talking about getting under the floor. It's like, wait a minute, this team's won how many games in a row? Like, I know they were pretty
Mhm.
bad to start the year, and I don't think they're going to just somehow win the Eastern Conference or something, but they're playing better basketball. Maybe it's not time to blow it up because a lot of these guys are still pretty young at the end of the day. To go out and get a solid vet like Derek White, who's been just, again, that's the definition of him in San Antonio to me, is just solid. Like, you need
Yeah,
those guys.
you
He'll
do.
give them a boost, and to go out and get Tice, so I think it's a useful big where they needed a boost. This was a good deadline for Boston. I thought they were, to me, obviously, again, Harden and Brooklyn and Philly with that whole deal is going to get all the headlines, and those will be the winners, if you will. But Boston had a really good deadline. This is, and especially for Brad Stevens in the front office for the first time. This is a real solid job by Boston overall.
I like the moves. Yeah, I completely agree. I wonder how the Rockets approach Schroeder, if it's like a John Wall situation, like we never actually see him
No,
play.
I think he'll play. I think at this point, like, he's playing on an expiring.
Yeah.
Maybe
But
they
why?
decide to.
But why? Not
Well, they could.
just let the young guys play. Do
They
the
also
same
could
thing with
buy him
Wall.
out. The other
Yeah,
reality is they
that's
also could
true.
buy him out. They buy him out. I think somebody, maybe he goes
Picks him
back
up.
to a contender. I think there's
That's
somebody that
cool.
would
Yeah, I
somebody would
agree.
definitely take a flyer on Dennis Schroeder still. I don't love his style of play. I never have necessarily, but
Mhm.
all right. So let's go to San Antonio. We mentioned the Derek White trade. So they got Josh Richardson and Romeo Langford from Boston. They also traded Thad Young, Drew Eubanks, and a second round pick to Toronto for Goran Dragic and a protected first. Dragic is going to get bought out. But I mean, for the Spurs, Thad Young, I mean, there was a point where he was even playing this year. So them moving on there makes sense. They get a first round pick back,
Well,
which is
that's what I
huge.
mean. The fact that they even got a first round pick for a guy that wasn't playing much for them is pretty big.
Yeah, Eubanks hasn't really panned out there. And I mean, on the other hand, like I said, again, Toronto going out and getting Thad Young, adding a little bit of that front court depth that they were looking for. Like, that's a really
Mhm.
good pickup and just furthers my belief. I don't really want to play Toronto, and I don't think anybody else does either. Like, Thad Young is the definition of a professional veteran, has played well at every stop he's been at. I expect him to continue doing that for Toronto. So that's a good look for him. Giving up the first, yeah, for sure. But
Well, we were
it's
getting
a lot, but
into
that is solid. I understand why they do that.
Nick Nurse was getting into the Thibs realm of starter minutes. Like his starters
Yeah,
were starting to play a lot, so getting kind of some bench help is even if he takes a few minutes from each, and it
yeah,
goes back to what I was referencing when we were talking about the Sixers and teams in the East. Siakam's been playing center. They've been doing the small ball thing right now. So maybe Thad Young can help out with that a little bit. Because they don't really have like a big that they can kind of throw in there and do that with, and have been relying on the small ball a lot. So wonder if that continues. I'd imagine that continues going forward, and Thad probably fits that a little bit to help them with that mentality.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. I think it was a great pickup for them. Um, and then so we talk about Boston Spurs. Okay, there are only two more quick ones I want to hit before we get out of here. One is Charlotte getting Montrezl Harrell for Vernon Carey and Ish Smith. Release to Ish continues to bounce around. Really, my biggest thing of note here is Montrezl Harrell. On Ish was in Washington too, so he'll be back there. There is some, quick familiarity, if you will. Ish has also been everywhere. But no, it's cool that Trez and Terry Rozier get to play again together. They play together in Louisville, so that's fun.
Yeah, I like it. This was I think this was one that was probably the not least talked about, but definitely one of the
No,
lower on the
it's
list of talked about trades.
we're at the bottom of the talked about trades here. The Pacers sent Torrey Craig to the Suns for Jalen Smith and a future second round pick. I think Torrey Craig has been a really solid wing. Again, 3-and-D type guy. Boost Phoenix's bench a little bit. They're a contender. I don't think he's going to be asked to play heavy minutes, but I think that's a good pickup for him. He was
With Smith, I mean, with Sabonis being gone, maybe he gets some more minutes, so could be an opportunity there.
Yeah, definitely. Again, take a flyer. Why not?
Hmm.
And then the Celtics traded Bol, PJ Dozier, and a second round pick. And more importantly, because I wanted to end on this, because the Magic tweeted, "Welcome to Orlando, cash considerations," and they tweeted a bag of money and said, "Welcome to Orlando."
How
Um,
messed up is that?
it's so funny. It's absolutely incredible. Bol will at least make G League fun, maybe if he plays in Lakeland. So shout out to my guy Nick Grenowitz, who will get to call Bol if he's
will
down
they?
there.
Will they? Will they see the? Uh, will they see the court this year? I know there were some injuries.
No, Bol's not playing this year. Dozier already got bought out. Bol's not playing
Oh,
this
okay, okay,
year.
okay.
They honestly, he may never play for Orlando. But like, why not? I guess
Yeah.
essentially, like, you're clearly not doing much of anything here. So I think a couple of Orlando fans were a little I wouldn't say disappointed is the word, but they were a little surprised they didn't move anything. But it's like if you were asking for a first rounder for Terrence Ross or Gary Harris, it's like, who are you really moving there? Like, I don't think
Yeah,
anybody's playing a first.
Ross was the one that I thought would move. If
I
somebody was gonna move, I think it would have been Ross.
So when Utah made a move, I basically went for Alexander Walker. That was kind of when I thought Terrence Ross was out of the realm a little bit. Like I did
Yeah.
think they weighed him for a little bit. Maybe the Lakers could have used Terrence Ross. Like I think that's somebody, but again, the Lakers don't have anything, so that's kind
Mhm.
of the problem when you don't have anything to offer. Rough times out there, but they'll be all right. They just won the
What's
title
up?
a few
What's up,
years ago.
Lakers?
Yeah, you'll be quite all right. I promise it'll be okay. Thank you
Mhm.
everybody for listening to this episode of the Driving Dish NBA podcast. Appreciate you guys. Leave us a review on iTunes, good or bad. Read them on the podcast.
Yep, and be sure to follow us on YouTube. Lucky number 32.
Yeah,
We're looking for our
Magic Johnson's a good
32nd
one.
subscriber.
That is a good
Yeah,
one. If you're not
but
an Apple
you're
user, we're everywhere else you can find a podcast.
right, and the only requirement is if you are number 32 on our subscriptions, when you comment on the videos, you have to comment as if you're Magic. So
Okay, right. His tweet about the Lakers lost to Portland the other night. I promise I didn't mean to make this a double on the Lakers end of the segment, but like, man, his tweet about it being bleak, because that was inexcusable. Like, they lost to Portland, and Portland had nobody. Nobody. They lost to Portland without Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum. That
mhm,
is inexcusable. They
not
didn't even
good.
have Russ to blame that time.
Yeah, not good.
Not
Not
good.
good. Ooh.